Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the LETSHUOER DZ4. Before I get started, I just wanted to thank LETSHUOER for having sent me this review sample. You know, it's always nice to get review samples, as it means I don't have to spend any money. However, that doesn't mean that I am in any way biased by what I will say. I will speak my mind. I will be truthful and honest and say my down-to-earth opinion about the DZ4 without having any influence from LETSHUOER. Anyway, this is the box. Typical LETSHUOER appearance, very understated, nothing fancy, no crazy waifus, nothing. You open up the box. Inside of the box, what do we get? We get some paperwork, as you can see, some instructions and stuff. All right, IMs came over there. We have a puck style carrying case, which I'll show you in a second, and the tips actually came inside of the case. The tips have well, there's balanced ones, which are the white ones, which I'm actually using because they work perfectly, so no need to you know, have to use my KB07s. And it's got the vocal tips, which are slightly narrower bore than the white ones, and that's basically it. So the tips, that's it. Get this out of the way here. The case is this. It's again very similar to what we've seen being used before, however full plastic, not a metal like we've seen, for example, the EJ07M, but nice enough, everything fits in there. Yeah, done. Excuse me. As for the IMs themselves, first of all, the cable, nice quality cable, similar to the S12 but more malleable, nice, really nice cable, measured fine as well. And as for the IMs, it's a combination of a resin shell in this kind of tan color, coffee tan color, and a metal faceplate with a kind of very mellow gold color with the emblem of the DZ4 as well on the actual faceplate. Nice. It's not heavy. It's a bigger IM than usual, but it's not heavy. You know, it fits nicely, isolates nicely. Really no complaints that I can give. Nothing. Ergonomically, it's fine. Just want to bring your attention here to, there we go. It's got three tubes or three exits, which I'll explain now in a second on what I believe is the way that this has been done with those tubes, or the way that it's been set up. All right. Anyway, that's the basic physical aspects of the DZ4. What more can I say about the DZ4? Well, the DZ4's calling card is the fact that it uses 3 dynamic drivers of 6mm, titanium diaphragm, and a 4th driver also of 6mm, which is a passive radiator. However, in my humble opinion, although very smartly implemented, the idea here has not been a full-on passive radiator, much like what we've seen now lately in the so-called isobaric applications of some of these IEMs. They are not full-on isobaric applications. They are quasi-isobaric. I would call this a quasi-passive radiator system. And what do I mean by that? Let me just quickly show you here some drawings. I apologize for my artistic capabilities. Anyway, usually we have various types of enclosures for base drivers, but the most common ones are a sealed enclosure. Okay, the drivers parameters known as QTS, QMS, QES, VAS, DCR resistance. There are a whole bunch of parameters of the driver interact or determine then what should be the volume that the enclosure should have for us to obtain a minus 3 dB point, which is satisfactory. For example, if we see here this small little graph, usually sealed enclosures, they have a very slow descent into the base frequencies. Start rolling off, and that rolling off, or that point where it rolls off, is determined then by that volume. So it can sometimes mean that the enclosure has to be quite big in order for us to obtain a minus 3D point, which is decent. And by a minus 3D point, I mean a point where that base has dropped off by about half of what it was before. And usually we try and aim for something decent. We want about 40 Hertz to have a nice full bass. Okay. Then we also have base reflex enclosures, which again the driver's parameters interact with the volume of the actual enclosure and then help determine what is the length and diameter that the port that it has should have. That port is then tuned to that frequency which you want to, let's say, consider as the peak of the bass, all right? And usually what this then does help is higher efficiency, because that rear wave is now also used to emphasize, and it's done in a way that both outputs are summed, all right? So you get the output of the port and the output of the driver being summed, and so there's a higher efficiency, higher output with relatively smaller enclosures, all right? And what that happens is, again, showing you quickly this diaphragm, you have the response, there's a boost around that, usually there's a boost around that tuning frequency that we've selected, let's say 35 Hertz, and then there's a drop-off, a more prominent drop-off, usually about 24 dBs per octave, while on a seal it's about 12 dBs per octave. And then we have a passive radiator setup, where we have our active driver and the passive radiator, which is a driver without any magnet system. Usually it's the same diameter. It can be smaller if it's got a higher excursion capability. We see that a lot in these portable little Bluetooth speakers, where there's usually a driver in the back or underneath or something, which helps emphasize the bass frequencies. That driver's diaphragm has a specific weight, and that weight again helps emphasize a specific frequency, okay, that we want to boost. Usually it boosts a frequency which the driver itself can maybe have some difficulty in reproducing, all right? Especially in those Bluetooth speakers, you will see that the main speaker is usually already quite small, and then that passive radiator is pretty big, but it's that marriage, that matching is done in a way that you actually see that passive radiator vibrating quite a bit, and it's able to reproduce those lower frequencies like we are able to get out of those little small Bluetooth speakers. Anyway, that's a basic overview of what a passive radiator true system should be like. In the DZ4, I don't think it's a true implementation of a passive radiator. And why do I say this? Well, first of all, let me just quickly show you here a picture courtesy of Michael Bruce. First of all, okay, that's the insides of the DZ4. So we have the three drivers, the passive radiator. These two drivers are connected directly to the terminals, so they are working full range. Those two drivers, as far as I was able to ascertain, they are then the two big ports that we see on the actual nozzle, and they have white filters. Those white filters have a 680 ohm resistance, acoustic resistance, and they basically limit or bring down the higher frequencies of the two drivers. Therefore, I believe that these two drivers are giving bass, and it's not only this one giving the bass, and no, these two drivers are giving bass frequencies, which is then complemented by what the third driver does. And the third driver, in my opinion, is working just as a mid and higher frequency driver. Why? Because this is a capacitor and a resistor. There's a capacitor and a resistor connected to it. We're effectively working as a high pass filter. Okay, and by working as a high pass filter, it then means that it's limited in the bass frequencies. So I would say, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, that these two drivers are the ones responsible for the bass. This third driver is responsible for the mids and the highs, okay? Complementing or adding onto that one there. Now, the third board that we see there, which is a thinner board, I cannot really confirm if it's connected up to this one or connected up to that one, as not only we cannot see it here, but actually this diagram, which LETSHUOER also provides, is not very very clear on where or how that's done. You can see the two drivers there are connected to the bigger bores, and then we see the passive and the third driver, the third active driver, and we don't really understand if they are connected together or if it connects how somehow to the other one. It's not clear. I really cannot say. What I do know is what they've done is, in my opinion, what they've done is they have taken advantage. Usually when we are tuning an IEM, or we're setting up a DD in an IEM, the dynamic driver, and you've seen this many times. Okay, this is the nozzle with the tip there in a very rudimentary manner, and then you have that front vent hole. Okay, that front vent hole has a filter on it. That filter is there at a specific with a specific value, and will determine the bass output of the driver. So the bass is you know, if this was direct, then you would get the maximum bass out of that. But because we want to tune the bass, we have to vent some of that output out. If there's nothing, if it was completely open there, then you'd lose that bass. So we have to put a filter on that front vent nozzle hole to determine how much bass we want. All right. Okay. Now, what I believe they have done is they've taken that same exit of that bass that's wanting to be bleeded out, and they've attached it to the passive radiator there. And that passive radiator does have a diaphragm inside, and does have also a little damper on the center of that diaphragm. And the way that damper works, or how much that damper will allow the air to pass or not, will be responsible for then moving that passive radiator. Okay, so if that damper is very porous, it won't move that passive radiator too much. If that damper is less porous, it will allow that diaphragm to then move back and forth, and then adding on to the bass frequencies, or the bass capabilities of the dynamic driver that is connected up to it. So that's how I believe they've done it. Whether or not now that passive radiator is connected up to the two drivers, or then connected only up to that third driver, I cannot really ascertain, but that's how I believe it's done. It's a reutilization of that venting of that air that usually comes out of that port, and it's usually just vented out into that small hole that we have next to the IEMs. Let me just quickly show you here once so you see what I mean. So usually, there we go. Okay, so what usually happens is that if you look carefully there, that hole there, that little hole there is the one that determines the bass. Okay, and that one there, okay, is the one over here. All right, and what they've done is, instead of venting it out, they've rerouted it into that passive radiator. Okay, into that, let me just show you here again, Michael Bruce's. They've rerouted it into this blue driver there. Okay, the center of that driver it has that let's say that filter attached to it, onto that diaphragm which is inside, and the ability of that filter to let more or less air pass through it will vibrate that diaphragm more, and create to a certain extent a passive radiator application. Not a full-on passive radiator application, because ideally what we should be getting is a perfect seal between that driver and whatever drivers are being used as the bass drivers, much like the picture that I showed you here before, or well, not a picture, the drawing, much like this. This is what we ideally wanted, but since we cannot guarantee that in that small space, this is the best they've come up with. And the reality is, you know, it works. It does work. It does work. It doesn't work badly, and it actually is a smart implementation of you know, the usage of that air that would otherwise just be wasted, to emphasize the bass frequencies. Anyway, that's kind of a small little explanation on what's going on, in my opinion, with the DZ4. What do I then have here to kind of set the stage and compare? Well, some of these IMs are not really to compare, but those that will remember from years past, the Duno DM380 was also a 3 dynamic driver IM. It used the 2 5s and a 6. Just the only thing that was missing was the passive radiator. And you know what? It actually was a nice IM. When we're talking back now, 2018 or something like that, and it actually wasn't a bad IM. It actually was quite entertaining. If it suffered from anything, was maybe from some QC issues. I've had maybe 3 or 4 of these, and all of them were kind of very different. 2 of them were pretty similar, but 2 of them were completely all over the place. But overall, it doesn't sound bad. Honestly, it doesn't sound bad. It's a V-shape. It doesn't sound bad. It's got nice bass. The 2 5s are doing the bass, if I'm not mistaken, if memory recalls properly. And it actually doesn't sound bad. Obviously, the LETSHUOER, the DZ4 is a better implementation. So I've got that. I've got here the TRI Star River, which kind of has been very quiet. Not much has been said about it. I've got here the HM20, the CCA HM20, because not only does it have a kind of a similar-ish curve, but it uses a 7mm dynamic driver, and you know, kind of priced at the same value. and I just think that this IM is very underrated. It goes very much unnoticed, very much. The Project Red, 10 plus a 6, 10 plus no 10 plus a 7 if I'm not mistaken, millimeter driver. Also 2 dynamic drivers, so kind of following the same philosophy of the DZ4. The truth here is Hexa, 1 plus 3, again priced more or less the same price. This is roughly this is about $80. This is $79. The Project Red is 55. The Star River is 49. That's about 60. And then here the HD Sound Heart Mirror Pro, around $70. Just a single DD, but with a very kind of similar vibe to this. I've also got those two there, which I'm not really comparing, but these two are what? That's the Unique Melodies 3DT. 3 dynamic drivers, 2 7s and a 10. The 2 7s handling the bass and the 10 handling the mids. In my opinion, one of the very nicest dynamic driver applications. Okay, and one of my favorite IMs, the Panon Serial. 3 dynamic drivers, a 10, a 8, and a 6. This thing is an absolute beast, and I've got these two here because when we're talking dynamic driver applications in multiple dynamic drivers, these two for me are the references that I always use. So I always like comparing other IMs to these two, kind of to understand how far off they are from those two. Those two are my references. In terms of what I used the Venture Electronics, the Prime Deck with the Runabout 2 RA, the RA2 BFE, plus the Prime Deck. I used my Cayenne, I used the Panon Tail, I used the M15 with the NX7, as you can see. So I used multiple sources to see which would be the best combination. Onto the sound. All right. What is the sound, or what is the characteristic here of the sound of the DZ4? It's a very smooth kind of Harman application, I would say. Very relaxed bass, a little bit of a sub bass emphasis, but not monstrous basses. No, never monstrous basses, but nice smooth bass, a little bit mid bass shy. It would be nice personally if it had just a little bit more mid bass, but what is there in terms of the bass is fine. It's not offensive or lacking in any major way. And then it's got this very relaxed as well, pinna gain, mids, and upper mids, very very relaxed as well, and then rolling off into the treble and so on. The treble could do with a little bit more sparkle, could do with a little bit more twinklies and sparkles, but once again, nothing offensive overall. And contrary to what some other reviewers said, I actually didn't feel offended in any way by the DZ4. Sorry, my apologies. I actually think the DZ4 doesn't sound bad. It doesn't. It's not a wow sound in any manner. Okay, and by a wow sound, it's not like an IM that I put into my ears the first time and I was, wow, this really impressed me. No, it just sounds nice and safe. I actually believe very much that this was probably a way of LETSHUOER trying out a new technology, seeing how it works, and maybe we could be expecting something further down the line following the same philosophy, but implemented in a better way, either with better quality drivers or larger size drivers. But I truly believe that this is a way of them seeing what we can expect. As for the whole dual dynamic 3 drivers and the whole thing, the whole shebang, okay, well, let's get into some math. 6mm diameter. Okay, I hope you guys can see this. Well, let me just so 6mm driver diameter means we have a radius of 3mm, means we have a circumference of 18.2. Okay, area can be calculated by pi r squared, or then by diameter divided by 2 squared, or then we can also calculate it by the circumference squared divided by 4 times pi. What that basically means, that whole thing, so in case you guys don't know, so diameter is from point to point, radius is half of that, the circumference is completely around. What that basically means is we have 28 square millimeters for a 6mm driver. All right, okay, so let me just turn around here to the side. So 28 square millimeters for a 6mm driver. If we are using now 2 drivers basically as the base drivers, okay, we've got 30 and 30, 60. So we have close to what would be a 9.2mm driver is, so we got just over just a little bit over more air, just over in terms of total area, just over a little bit of an 8mm, just shy of a 9mm. 10mm has 78 by comparison, so you would need almost, well, 2.5 drivers to equal a 10mm. So as you can see, another example that I can give you is the 10th anniversary also uses from Panon, also uses 2 6mm, and basically what they have done is they've used the 2 6mm instead of, you know, a 9.2. Our audio Aurora uses 2 7.5mm. Each driver has a 44 square millimeter diameter area, which means it's basically 44 and 44 is 88. So we kind of getting close to an 11mm dynamic driver. So you could say that the Aurora would be the equivalent of basically using an 11mm driver. The likes of the Blessing 3, which uses 2 10mm, that's 78 and 78, it's about 160 more or less. That would be the equivalent of, well, way bigger than actually a 13mm driver. Although in that particular case it's been tuned in a very relaxed manner, and you know, I'm sure that when we see the dusk, we will see those two drivers then showing their pure their ability to really shine and come out on top. Another thing that I just want to bring your attention to is, you know, sometimes when we see the graphs of the drivers and so on and so forth, we sometimes will see, let me just quickly put a graph, we will sometimes we'll see on the smaller drivers, we will see them being very emphasized, and then kind of, you know, we have the curve. We will see this happening, this kind of very big emphasis, and we will think automatically, oh, this thing is going to be a nightmare, it's going to have too much bass, muddy, and so on and so forth. No, once I forget that the diameter of that driver is important. And this usually happens with like 6mm. You look at the Panon, the 10th anniversary, you look at the Phoenix Call from Celeste, that's what basically happens. And when you have a smaller, a larger diameter driver, we usually see that that bass curve is very relaxed, and then, you know, goes into the mids, into the highs. And we look at it and we think, oh, this is going to be too lean. You know, you look at things like the BQ-EYZ, the autumn, the winter. They use relatively big drivers, 13mm, and you think, oh, it's going to be bass dry. And no, again, it has to do with how much surface area there is, and so there's no need for it to be overemphasized. If we have to make an analogy to car audio, for example, if we have a single 18-inch subwoofer and we have two 10 inches, those two 10 inches, they have to work much harder to move the same amount of air as an 18-inch will move. Just, you know, an 18-inch will move a millimeter or two and will move about the same amount of air as those 10 inches moving 6 or 7mm. All right, and that's basically something that I wanted to bring to your attention. They've used the smaller drivers, in my opinion, to perhaps have quicker transient response, faster, more high quality bass. We see that being the case in the 10th anniversary from Panon. I don't particularly see that being the case here in the DZ4. I don't think that the drivers that they used, although they seem to be half decent in quality, I don't think that they are of a superior quality that will really maybe show or be able to bring out the main reason for using multiple smaller drivers. I really don't. I think probably the main reason for them using multiple drivers was just an exercise in what can be done, and an exercise in what the engineers of LETSHUOER can do. Okay, yeah, that's how I feel personally with regards to this. Anyway, now that I've bored you to death with all this talk, let's just get into the sound and make a quick comparison. The sound of the DZ4, it's got a nice bass. It's got a nice chilled out bass, you know, relaxed. The mids are also pretty decent, relaxed. The treble as well, relaxed. Everything is very chilled out, very relaxed, very laid back. And when you start comparing to some of these IMs, then you start understanding more or less where it sits compared to the Hexa. And I'm comparing it to the Hexa because it's right here. Compared to the Hexa, honestly, it's a very nice sounding IM, very relaxed, but it sounds, comparatively, it sounds dead in my opinion. It's way too chilled, way too relaxed. It's got nice mids, nice highs. You know, in terms of its technical capabilities, it's very efficient. But it lacks a lot in terms of fun. It is an IM disc that will be the ideal for someone that's looking for the ultimate audiophile reproduction. And yes, it is safe to say that this could be, like, let's say, the modern day Blessing 2. Okay, but when you compare this to the Blessing 2, the Blessing 2 is way more engaging. I mean, the Blessing 2 is more fun in all of its clinicalness, in all of its laid backness. It is a way more fun IM. This here really only personally only really shines over the DZ4 in terms of how the upper mids and the highs are done. Okay, overall I would choose the DZ4 over this. Okay, so that one is out of the way. Compared to the HM, to the Heart Mirror Pro, bass wise, I like the bass on the HM more. Okay, although there is occasions where it doesn't show its true potential in terms of its 10mm driver, in my opinion. All right, I still am a believer that the original Heart Mirror was a better IEM, although you know, that this has got more bass. In terms of the mids and highs, the Heart Mirror is a better IEM. Period. It's got more detail, more quality. It's more polished. I think overall, although it's not a huge bloodbath, it's not a huge difference, I think overall that this is a more coherent sounding IM, more capable sounding IM than the DZ4. Okay, it's a simple single DD, no fancy, nothing, passive radiators, multiple drivers, nothing, but it's a more capable IM. Choose the right tips, because it is very much tip dependent. Choose the right tips, and you will be impressed. It's not as technical as its original Heart Mirror brother, but it's very capable, very able to satisfy a vast majority of genres, and at the end of the day, it's kind of a harmonious tune, safely done as well. I mean, this is about being safe and easy to like. All right, so this one, in my opinion, is better than DZ4, not by much, but better. Okay, so that's out of the way. The DM380 is not even gonna no point in talking about it. Compared with the Star River and the Star River and the DZ4, although this uses a 10mm for the bass, there's not much difference here, because this has got quite a bit of mids, upper mids and highs, and that extra energy that it has there, yes, does make it more technically capable than this, better detail retrieval than this, but it also can lead to some more early fatigue. It's not as smooth and as relaxed sounding as the DZ4, so ultimately it will be an IM that I would say, yes, it can be better if what you like is an energetic reproduction, although here this will be a safer choice. Overall, it will be a safer option if you just want something that can listen to it for hours and not be too fatigued after a while. I think that's the biggest issue here with the Star River. The Star River, although it has the switches to help it out and everything, I don't think that it has enough to ultimately beat just outright the DZ4. Yes, it does have one good thing going for it, which is the price. And if, you know, like I said, if this is what you prefer, a little bit more energy, then this could be an option. So I would say that these two are more side grades. Okay, if this one gets beaten and this one is better, these two are more side grades compared to the HM20 from CCA. The HM20 from CCA, for me personally, is a better IM. Period. More bass, better quality bass, more rumble. It doesn't sound like a 7mm in any way. Better execution of the mids, of the upper mids, of the treble. It's just a better IM. It is plain and simple, just a better IM. Okay, you can argue, oh, but it's a 1+7. Okay, fine, so it's a 1+7, but it's been well done, and I still believe that this is one of the best IMs that KZ has done up to today. Yes, fair enough. They've had some really nice IMs lately. The VZ10, very capable with all the tuning switches and everything. Very capable. Nothing against it. AS24, amazing IM. But this one, the HM20, in its simplicity, doesn't, in my opinion, stay behind. And for me, it's a better IM. Okay, so this one is also a better IM. All right. As compared with the Project Red. Overall, the Project Red, for me as well, surpasses the performance of the DZ4. It's just a nicer tuning overall. very nice sub bass, especially if you use the impedance adapter. Then you really get some really nice sub bass. The passage of the sub bass into the mid bass, and then the marriage into the mids, perfectly executed. There's no bleed. There's nothing. It is to make it sound fair, and to not seem that like this is just completely destroying the DZ4. Now, I would say that this is the DZ4 just with a little bit more guts. The DZ4 with better quality drivers, let's put it that way. Because, why do I say that? Because there are instances where the DZ4 actually does keep up with the Project Red quite nicely. I mean, if I'm listening to like stuff like In a Sentimental Mood from Cecil Norby, or if I'm listening to some female voices, but in a very chilled out manner, this does its job very nicely and keeps up very well. However, where do you see it losing its ability? It's when it's something a little bit more dynamic, like From Dusk to Dawn from George Duke. It's got that nice bass impact. You can see the DZ4 just cannot keep up, especially when you start cranking up the volume. Elephant from Karel Duboc as well. Feels Good from Rashad Patterson. You start seeing that then that starts not being able to keep up with this. It doesn't. Why? Because this 10mm then does have the advantage of the more surface area, okay? And that advantage of the surface area is evident in the way that it plays back. So I believe overall that this also edges out the DZ4 and is a better, more sensible option in terms of, well, first of all, it's $20 cheaper. So just alone on that, it's worthwhile, the Project Red over the DZ4. All right. And then, well, compared to those two, I mean, we already know those two are superior. There are instances, however, where the DZ4 does kind of give me hints of the 3DT. Why? Because the 3DT has got a more relaxed kind of bass presentation, but with regards to the serial, no, the serial just absolutely walks all over it in every aspect. Mids, upper mids, treble, presentation, technical, everything. There's nothing that the DZ4, in my opinion, with my music, can do that even remotely keeps up with the serial. With the 3DT, it does keep up with it sometimes. Only sometimes, not most, no, only sometimes, and it's down to the fact that the bass there is being tuned in a very kind of relaxed manner, like here in the mids and in the upper mids. The 3DT is also way more detailed, way more efficient, way more proficient in its technicalities. Okay, so at lower volumes, yes, okay, it can maybe trade a little bit of, can maybe, you know, cause a little bit of not even problems, but can make itself, you know, known. Look, I'm here. But the moment you start giving it a little bit more volume, there's no competition. Anyway, to wrap things up here, it's a valid IEM. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not a valid IEM. It's a nice implementation of a technology that's been around for a while, although not 100% implemented in the way that you would believe. You know, it sounds good. I would be wrong if I said it sounds bad. There are occasions where you're listening to it and it doesn't sound like just one driver. There are occasions where you can kind of almost, it sounds like if you had 3 individual drivers all put together. Okay, there are occasions you get that kind of feeling, but you know what? This is me really being nitpicky and really trying to pick on the DZ4. The overall reality is that DZ4 plays nicely, and you listen to stuff like Mediterranean Sunrise from Ardea Razzuti, or you listen to, for example, Musical Genocide from Gregory Porter, or you listen to High Stepping from Larry Carlton, and it does a nice job of those songs. It does not. It's fine. It doesn't play those songs in a bad way. The reality is, however, that there are things at comparable price that do it better. You know, and I mean, for example, the Star River, sorry, the Project Red from Truth is one such IEM. This does it better. You know, the HM20 does it better. That's the CCA. So it would be wrong of me saying that those two wouldn't be more viable options over the DZ4, because there are more viable options over the DZ4 in my opinion. But at the same token, there are ones that don't do it as well, and you know, the Hexa, which gets a lot of love, and I'm not saying it's not a good IM, but the Hexa, in my opinion, is costing the same amount, I would choose a DZ4, and I would choose a DZ4 all the time. The Star River, how much I like the Star River, especially when it came out, and I actually praised it. I would say as well that I would choose the Star River. I would choose over the DZ4 probably more times than I would choose the Star River, if I have to be totally honest. And with regards to the HE Sound Hard Mirror, the HE Sound Hard Mirror does edge out the Star River, the DZ4, but it doesn't edge it out in the same way that the Project Red or the HM20 do. The Project Red and the HM20 are, you know, notably better than the DZ4. They are. This one is better, but it's not a big difference. All right. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna show you quickly the graphs and we'll wrap it up. All right. You take care now. Bye bye. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the LETSHUOER DZ4. This is the graph of my LETSHUOER DZ4. Everything stays within a window of 64 to 74, so 10 dBs. You could call it a V shape, but effectively when you listen to it, it isn't, because first of all, bass is flat by 200, so there's a nice emphasis on the sub bass, a little bit lean on the mid bass. But then, you know, it just doesn't, it actually ends up sounding thin in the bass, contrary to what the graph would have you believe. Excuse me. Nicely progressive. Been again, peaks close to 3K, maintained itself nice and plateaued, some extension past 10K. This extension past 10K, excuse me, is not, I mean, it's got decent enough soundstage, decent enough imaging, but it's not as much as you would possibly think by looking at the graph. By looking at the graph, you would, you know, maybe think, oh wow, this is going to have some insane soundstage and so on and so forth, and it doesn't in fact have it. Anyway, this now, the next one I'm going to show you now is the CCA HM20, and straight away the thing that you notice is that yes, it has got more bass, but that bass doesn't come at an expense, in my opinion, of hindering the performance in the mids and the highs. I've never found it to be missing in any aspect or being, you know, recessed or anything of the sort. It just sounds absolutely amazing, honestly. I truly think the HM20 is a really good IEM. Okay, next one now is oh, this is just for the sake of comparison. This is the Duno, the DM 380. It's quite evident again that it's got quite a bit more mid bass than the LETSHUOER, but then of course up top here things are not as polished. I mean, this is excessive, and you know, it does end up sounding a little bit dark because there's a relatively early roll off. No sibilance, that's fair enough, but you know, this doesn't. You would think that there would be some nice extension, you know, some nice treble, and it's fine. I guess it's fine. It's adequate. All right. Anyway, that's just for the sake of comparison. Just a quick little, you know, side note there. As well, a little quick side note which I actually didn't mention during the review, but I thought it would make sense to show it now here. Let me just quickly change here the color. This is the CVJ May, which can be had roughly for the same kind of money as the DZ4, and I personally think that the CVJ is a fantastic IEM. It really is. You know, from the bass to the mids to the highs, everything has been very well executed, and I think as well, although I didn't talk too much about it or anything about it actually during the review, I think this is a very solid IEM and a very solid alternative as well to the DZ4. All right, that's out of the way there. Let's get back to the ones that I did talk about in the review. The next one I'm going to show you now is the HD Sound Hard Mirror Pro in green. Very similar, as you can see the graph, very similar, but it's very evident that the technicalities and so on are superior. Better soundstage. Here the graph shows all that 3D-ness, and yes, it does have more 3D capability. In terms of the bass, it's what I was saying during the review. It does have more mid-bass line, definitely, but there are occasions where the bass doesn't really come across as being as fulfilling as the graph would lead you to believe. But anyway, it is what it is. The next one now is the Hexa. Okay, this is the Hexa. I apologize for the graph being a little bit off there, but it's just a tip, and inserting it into the coupler is sometimes isn't as easy. I mean, if you want lean, thin bass, this is the Hexa. It's got thin bass. And then, you know, upper mids and treble, very smooth, very relaxed. It's very detailed. Yes, it's more polished, more high quality as compared to the DZ4. But the DZ4, for me, is more fun with all the flaws that it has, with all the things that could have been better. Let's put it that way. The DZ4 is better. It is better. All right. Next one now is the. Where is it? Where is it? The Star River. Okay, number 13. Let me just change the color here to blue so you can actually stand out a little bit more. The Star River. It seems like it's got the same kind of bass. It's also very lean and so on, and it is. And there are occasions where you can kind of get the feeling that it's got more bass, but it's got more energy up top. And that more energy up top makes it sound ultimately overall leaner. Okay, there's more emphasis on the mids and upper mids and treble than there is on the DZ4, and so it is what it is. And then finally the Project Red. Where is it? Project Red, Project Red, Project Red. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? There we go. Exactly, number 10. Let me just change the color. I apologize as well a little for that little mess over here, but it's just a couple. Although it seems like it's going to be less vibrant, less alive. No, it's a different IM completely altogether. Way more technical, way more 3D-ness, bigger soundstage, very good in the imaging. Treble is spot on. Proper bass. I mean, the bass in the DZ4. Let me just clarify this so that I don't get any bad vibes. The bass is of good quality. It is. It's just lacking in quantity. It is just lacking in quantity. It needs a little bit more guts. And although you would probably say the same thing about the Clinical Project Red, the reality is, because it's a bigger size driver, it has more surface area, it doesn't end up sounding as lean. Okay, that's ultimately it. And that's it, guys. I mean, that's basically it. Just for the sake again of comparison, I've got here the Serial and the UM3DT. This one, the first I'm going to show you, is the UM3DT. I mean, okay, very lean bass. That's not what comes across when you actually listen to it. When you listen to it, it sounds really proper. There are occasions, yes, as I mentioned, that the DZ4 kind of gives hints of keeping up with it, let's putting it that way, but no, in terms of the mids and upper mids and treble, it's just a better IM. The 3DT, and then the Serial. Okay, this is an absolute monster of an IM in my opinion. Totally, it's not one of my favorite IMs for nothing. It is one of my favorite IMs because it's really good. You would think, okay, there's too much bleed into the mids and it's gonna mess up things. Forget it. I mean, forget it, seriously. It sounds absolutely fantastic. It's got a true old school vibe of sound going for it. It sounds really good, period. I mean, it's as simple as that. It sounds really, really good. It's a great tonality, great musicality. And that's it, guys. I mean, like I said earlier, the DZ4 didn't really shock me in a negative way. It sounds good. It's got a nice sound to it. If anything, like I said, it just maybe a little bit leaner in the bass, just a little bit more in the bass would have been nice. The mids and upper mids are fine. It's got decent enough treble. It could be a little bit more polished, but again, not offensive. Its biggest issue is just that it's got IMs at the same price, which just outdo it, and the Project Red is slightly cheaper and outdoes it. It outperforms it. The HM20 as well, in my opinion, outperforms it, and even the CVJ May, like I mentioned, although I didn't talk too much about it during the actual review, also outdoes it. But on the same token, it also outperforms others like the Hexa, in my opinion, with all the benefits that a Hexa can have as a truly audiophile capable IM. The the DZ4 is a better option. All right. Anyway, guys, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions you might have, please feel free to ask me. All right. You take care now. Bye bye.